It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. 2 regions in England declare major incidents due to flooding as people are rescued from schools and cars.
I saw a person in the car trying to, a quarter of the door was open because the water was quite high. So that's all really, because then I couldn't recall anything.
Snow sweeps the UK and Ireland with thousands left without power and water. Also tonight, the Prime Minister attacks the lies being spread on social media about his own handling of grooming gangs.
Those that are spreading lies and misinformation as far and as wide as possible, they're not interested in victims. They're interested in themselves.
A new health partnership between the NHS and private care, which the government hopes will cut waiting times.
Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 312 votes.
And Kamala Harris certifies Donald Trump's win in the 24 US election as families of January the 6th rioters continue to demand their release. Plus, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Hello there, good evening. For many, today was meant to be the first day back to work and to school. And for many, bad weather has disrupted those plans. Dozens of people have been rescued and major incidents have been declared in both Leicestershire and Lincolnshire with rising floodwater. A man's body has been recovered from an area of flooding in North Yorkshire. Well, let's take a look then at the overall picture. Last night was the UK's coldest winter night. The lowest temperature recorded was minus 13.3 degrees Celsius in Loch Glascarach in the Scottish Highlands. Major incidents due to flooding were declared in Lincolnshire and Leicestershire. The Environment Agency's flood warning risk from rivers will extend into tomorrow. Hundreds of schools were closed across the country, including 175 in Bradford, which had seen heavy snowfall. Manchester Airport's runways were closed early on Monday morning because of heavy snow, but have since reopened. Major highways across the country were shut in parts due to flooding, and train lines in almost every corner of the country were closed. Yellow warnings of snow and ice are in place across parts of Scotland, the west of England, Wales and Northern Ireland overnight and into tomorrow. And a snow and ice warning is in place for the whole of Ireland until midday tomorrow, with hazardous travelling conditions and poor visibility expected. We'll have more on the situation there in just a moment. First, though, Greg Milam has more on the situation in the UK.
Oh, don't worry, we'll be fine. Yeah, my friend is coming.
When those floodwaters come, they can overwhelm you quickly. In moments, a restaurant car park in Leicestershire is turned into the scene of a daring rescue. A man wades out to help a woman trapped in her car and carries her to safety.
I saw a person in the car trying to, a quarter of the door was open because the water was quite high. The only thing in my head was just get out straight and take that person away. She was devastated, she was traumatized, she was in a very bad stage. And I grabbed her and then I just pulled her, slowly took her to the stairs.
As the waters rose, Leicestershire Fire and Rescue Service was the first to declare a major incident. A total of 59 people have been rescued from across properties in Leicestershire by the emergency services. And such is the scale of flooding in Great Glen that right here on the scene of that last dramatic rescue, just hours later, we witnessed another. Elizabeth, a pensioner, had been stranded in her house all day as it filled with sewage. She had to be helped out in an inflatable raft and taken to safety. A major incident was also declared in nearby Lincolnshire. Emergency services helping children stranded by floodwater in their school to safety. The day had started for many dealing with yet more snow. In Harrogate, it was a struggle for some, fun for others. It meant widespread disruption for those starting the new work week on the roads or rails. At Barnard Castle, it was a picture postcard scene, but it's the combination of all this snow and heavy rainfall, forecasters say, that's been a challenge.
We have mild air in one part of the country and colder air in another. And it's the mix of those that produces all this really quite potent weather in terms of rain, snow and strong winds. And our infrastructure can't really cope with it very well, particularly with snow and ice. And that's the reason why there's been so many school closures and also airport issues through the last few days.
And with yellow weather warnings for snow and ice now in place for vast swathes of the country until tomorrow, the best advice is to tread carefully. Matthew Thompson, Sky News, Leicestershire.
And Matthew Thompson is in the village of Great Glen in Leicestershire for us tonight. Floods rise fast, Matthew, as you've seen there. And tonight, another severe flood warning issued.
Yes, that's correct. We're still here in Great Glen, the scene of those two dramatic rescues we brought you in our report. And you can probably see the water, since we filmed those, has receded somewhat, but the flood risk remains. Just a few miles to the north of here, the first severe flood warning has been issued. That means there's a risk to life. It's on the River Soar, and it's particularly means evacuation may be required of a caravan park near Barrow upon Soar, just to the north of Leicestershire. There are currently 187 flood warnings in place across the country, only one severe one here in Leicestershire. And it certainly seems to be the case that the East Midlands has borne the brunt of the flooding so far, with Leicestershire and Lincolnshire declaring severe incidents. And it also is likely to get worse, the authorities here say. I mean, there's surface water all over the county, and that could freeze as temperatures drop below zero overnight. And then, of course, as you've been talking about, we've seen those yellow weather warnings in place right across the country for snow and ice. And I think it's certainly possible that conditions right across the country get worse before they get any better.
Matthew, thank you. Well, in Ireland, the Weather Service has defended not issuing a red warning after tens of thousands of people were left without power and water. Sky's Ireland correspondent Stephen Murphy reports now from Shalville in County Cork.
Pretty as a picture from the air, pretty ugly consequences on the ground. Charleville in County Cork was particularly badly affected by the snow. When the power went at Geary's Bar, they couldn't retract the beer garden roof. The weight of the snow brought it crashing down.
It's completely gone. We're devastated. We don't know. We know now in the next few days what we have to do, but it's going to seriously affect our business now.
Hundreds are without power here. All resources are being used to stay warm.
And you're lucky that you have a generator.
Yeah, well, I have a stove as well, a wood-fired stove.
Yeah.
But this is heating the whole house.
Others angry that the Irish Weather Service didn't issue a red warning, sticking to orange instead.
I actually think it's terrible they didn't do a red alert, because I mean in Dublin, to be straight away a red alert, everything would be closed down.
And what difference would that have made to how people would have prepared?
I think people would be a bit more prepared for it, and they'd realise that they'd have to get a lot more stuff in.
Met Air and the Irish Weather Service has defended its warning system, saying that with predicted snowfall levels of between 10 and 30 centimetres, this did meet the threshold for an orange warning and not a red warning, which it says is reserved for the most rare and dangerous weather conditions.
The frozen temperatures will continue for days. It could be the weekend before life in Charleville returns to normal. Stephen Murphy, Sky News, Charleville in County Cork.
Tonight, the government announced plans to strengthen laws on child sexual abuse. That comes after the Prime Minister was forced to defend his record on grooming gangs after a flurry of social media posts from Elon Musk. So Keir Starmer was meant to be talking about how his government planned to reform the NHS. In a moment, we'll take a closer look at the history of grooming gangs in the UK and what the government is doing. Sky's political editor, Beth Rigby, has our first report.
The tinsel's still up, but the season of peace and goodwill long gone. The PM at a hospital in Surrey. A new year, but the same old challenges. How to relaunch his agenda with so many noisy distractions.
Do you need to take that?
What today was meant to be about, his big plan to cut hospital waiting lists. More local hubs and more involvement from the private sector.
I welcome a new agreement that will expand the relationship between the NHS and the private healthcare sector. That's more beds, more operations, more care, available to the NHS, treating patients free at the point of use, targeted at where we need them most.
But the PM's plans overshadowed by vicious attacks from the world's richest man, Elon Musk using his social media platform X to launch an onslaught against the PM, accusing him of being complicit in the rape of Britain for failing to tackle grooming gangs, while personally attacking one of Starmer's ministers. He called your safeguarding minister, Jess Phillips, an evil witch, a rape genocide apologist who should be put in jail. Does that sort of abuse of a minister make you feel angry, and what is your response to that?
Those that are spreading lies and misinformation as far and as wide as possible, they're not interested in victims. Jess Phillips has done 1,000 times more than they've even dreamt about when it comes to protecting victims of sexual abuse throughout her entire career. I'm prepared to call out this for what it is.
Typically reserved, today the Prime Minister impassioned.
What I won't tolerate is politicians jumping on the bandwagon simply to get attention when those politicians sat in government for 14 long years, tweeting, talking, but not doing anything about it. Now so desperate for attention that they're amplifying what the far right is saying.
But the Conservatives doubling down and promising a push in the Commons for a national inquiry.
Keir Starmer's claims this morning are absolutely disgraceful. It is not correct to brand as far right people who are raising legitimate concerns about the systemic, organised gang rape of vulnerable young girls.
This wasn't the start to the year that Number 10 expected, but far from being knocked off course. I'm told it was a deliberate choice by the Prime Minister to wade into this row, partly because he's angry about the safety risks it's posing for his MPs, but also because, in the words of one ally, he's authentically passionate about tackling child sexual exploitation and simply wasn't prepared to duck the issue. To that end, the government today announced plans to strengthen laws on child sexual abuse, but that's unlikely to calm a row that's as much about personalities and populism as policy. Beth Rigby, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, away from the political row, there are calls for the government to do more to implement recommendations made by reviews into child exploitation. Sky's home editor, Jason Farrell, has previously investigated the issue of grooming gangs and has been looking at what is being done to protect vulnerable young people.
In recent years, we've spoken to alleged victims of grooming across the country. In 2020, this woman in Yorkshire told us how her abuse had continued from childhood into adulthood.
They raped me first, and then they said to me, stop speaking to the police, don't speak to the police, why are you doing that?
In Hull, our investigation into several victims of a predominantly Asian grooming gang led to Humberside Police reopening the investigation.
That room, that flat, took my childhood from me. I think I was raped by around 150 men over the 3-year period.
In Glasgow, we met victim Tony Louise, who says she was abused from the age of 12.
When I went to the police, one of the police officers turned out to me and went, "You've got a very active imagination for a wee girl, haven't you?"
In more than a dozen regions where we explored the problem, a common theme was inaction and a failure to prosecute. Marlon, who we first interviewed 2 years ago when his daughter Scarlett was still going missing, says he was dissatisfied today with the Prime Minister's response.
I found it as an opportunity for him to have a go at other political parties. I don't care about other political parties. What I care about is children being groomed. Obviously, I've gone through that with my daughter, but this is continuing.
There have been successful prosecutions, such as this gang in Rochdale, and local public inquiries into grooming gangs in Telford, Rotherham and Greater Manchester.
The lessons from our past have been well and truly learned.
There was a national review into child abuse under Alexis Jay, but its section on grooming gangs was limited to 6 locations, mostly not known for having a problem. And Jay expressed frustration her recommendations hadn't been implemented. Today, the Home Secretary said that would change.
First, I can confirm we will make it mandatory to report abuse. Second, we'll also legislate to make grooming an aggravating factor in the sentencing of child sexual offences, because the punishment must fit the terrible crime.
The opposition echoed Elon Musk's call for a national inquiry.
Will the Home Secretary commission that national statutory public inquiry which can compel witnesses to attend, that can requisition evidence and where it can take evidence under oath?
The government says it's focused on improving police inquiries, and lawyer David Greenwood says they still aren't properly recording information about offenders.
I'm not convinced that the police forces and local authorities have gathered the necessary data. So I just don't think the data is there. Police should be working out who these groups are more actively and identifying them and using their powers to disrupt them.
Marlon, here with daughter Scarlett, is also calling for a national public inquiry. Arguably, there is more to learn, but it's also the case that there's plenty still to action. Jason Farrell, Sky News.
Well, the purpose of the Prime Minister's speech, of course, was to talk about reforms to the NHS. So what changes can patients expect to see? 14 new surgical hubs will be created, with 3 more set to be expanded by June. There'll be a significantly updated NHS app, allowing patients to choose from more providers and book diagnostic tests from more convenient locations, like community diagnostic centres. NHS trusts, which cut waiting times quickly, will be rewarded with more funding for local projects. And community diagnostic centres will be open 12 hours a day, 7 days a week where possible, and will offer a wider range of tests. Sky's health correspondent Ashish Joshi reports now from a diagnostic centre.
I'm going to check your blood pressure and your weight, and hopefully we can do a CT chest scan.
Martina McInhill is a lifelong smoker, or rather, she was. She packed up cigarettes just before Christmas. As she's in the high-risk group, Martina has been asked to come to her local community diagnostic centre for a CT scan to check for lung cancer.
I think it's a good thing, actually. It takes away from the hospital and, you know, it's better here, really. You're more connected with the people that are trying to help you.
So when the machine tells you to take a deep breath in, as much as you can.
This might look and feel like a hospital, but this community diagnostic centre, or CDC, is in a shopping mall on a high street in North London.
It's going to be a sharp scratch now.
Bringing care to the heart of the community is a key part of the government's elective reform plan to bring down waiting lists. It aims to create millions of appointments by building capacity in the system through more CDCs, extra surgical hubs, and using the private healthcare sector.
Here we offer several tests, X-ray, ultrasound, CT, MRI, ophthalmology tests, and also phlebotomy.
This centre is now open for 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, and soon it will be 7 days.
A lot of patients have a preconceived notion about attending hospitals. There's a lot of fear, and bringing this into a shopping mall, into an environment that is familiar to them, makes it a lot easier for them to access healthcare.
There are 165 of these diagnostic centres across the country. And by extending their opening hours, the government thinks it can create an extra 500,000 appointments. Having community diagnostic centres like this at the heart of the community on a high street or a shopping centre will be absolutely crucial in helping the government to deliver its elective targets. But while you have centres like this which are open for 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, it's great for patients. But where will the workforce come from? And this is the question being asked by the Royal Colleges.
We need to invest in our workforce as well to get the plan to work and be effective. But as well as the workforce, it's more having the right, kind of resources, whether it's our estates, whether it's having the IT infrastructure.
The ambition is certainly bold, but everyone, patients and staff, will want the government's NHS plans to work. Ashish Joshi, Sky News in central London.
And Ashish is here with me now. The announcement clearly overshadowed Ashish, but is this potentially game-changing?
Yes, potentially, being the key word there. This is a hugely ambitious project, and the government had to choose a target, I suppose, which is tangible. They know that the waiting list is growing month by month by month. They have to do something to tackle it. But what this doesn't do is address some of the long-term workforce issues that the NHS has. Essentially, what the government will do is use its assets, its resources, and the most important of which is its workforce, existing workforce, to carry out these extra appointments. Yes, they're going to be using some extra capacity in the private sector, but that is just a small part of the wide-ranging plans. When I spoke to the manager of this community diagnostic centre today, off record, I said, how did your staff react to saying they're going to be working 7 days a week? He said, look, we all want to see our patients, we all want to treat our patients, but yes, it's going to be tough. And I think you speak to any health leader anywhere in the country and you say to them, suddenly you've got to turn around to your workforce and say, guess what? From next week, we're going to be working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day with the existing workforce. That is going to be a challenge because they are a spent workforce. They worked through the pandemic. They've been working with this ever-growing waiting list, and it gets tougher and tougher. But if they manage to start bringing down the waiting list, even incrementally, a little bit at a time, then that will boost morale. And if it takes some pressure off the hospitals, off the acute hospitals, then more patients will be encouraged to go into CDCs like this one, and then the hospitals can do what they really have to do, emergency care, long-term care, things like cancer, and bring down the elective waiting list so they can focus on the things that the hospitals should be doing well.
Much to do. Ashish, thank you. If I'm having to fight internal battles, I cannot be the best option. That was the message from Justin Trudeau as he stepped down as the Prime Minister of Canada after nearly a decade in power. The 53-year-old has led the ruling Liberal Party since 2013 and the country since 2015, but has faced increasing calls to step down amid poor opinion polls and high-profile resignations. Sky's international correspondent Diana Magnay has this report.
And so, after 9 years as Prime Minister, a momentous announcement from Canada's Justin Trudeau.
Canadians deserve a real choice in the next election, and it has become obvious to me with the internal battles that I cannot be the one to carry the Liberal standard into the next election.
A familiar face on the international circuit, the longest standing of the current G7 crew. Justin Trudeau championed Ukraine, the climate and liberal values, which saw him come in with a strong mandate in 2015, but is not what voters want now.
Prime Minister, was it a productive meeting with President-elect?
It was an excellent conversation.
Especially not with Donald Trump threatening a 25% tariff on all Canadian goods and trolling the Canadian leader as just another governor of a US state. Trump tweeting on Truth Social after their meeting last month, "It was a pleasure to have dinner the other night with Governor Justin Trudeau of the great state of Canada. I look forward to seeing the governor again soon so that we may continue our in-depth talks on tariffs and trade." He grew up as Canadian political royalty, son of a revered Prime Minister, meeting the Queen first as a 5-year-old.
Rather different sentences.
Yes.
Aren't you?
I will say you were much taller than me the last time we met.
But his political star could not outshine the economic crunch from COVID. And in December last year, the sudden resignation of his finance minister dealt a final blow. Chrystia Freeland charging the government in the face of Trump's trade threats with costly political gimmicks, which make Canadians doubt that we recognise the gravity of the moment. The opposition Conservatives now hold a huge lead in the polls. Justin Trudeau left with these words for his rivals.
Stopping the fight against climate change doesn't make sense. Backing off on the values and strength in diversity that Canada has always worked to pull itself together on is not the right path for the country.
But with his popularity in shreds, he has concluded that the political path forward is not for him to tread.
Do you think it's irresponsible to resign? Why not earlier?
Diana Magnay, Sky News.
Back here, a prison officer who pleaded guilty to misconduct after she had sex with an inmate in a cell has been jailed for 15 months. 30-year-old Linda de Souza Abreu was charged after a video appeared online of her engaging in sexual activity in a cell inside Wandsworth Prison last June. Justin Welby has officially stepped down as the Archbishop of Canterbury over his handling of an abuse scandal. He announced his resignation last year after 12 years in the role. The Archbishop of York, Stephen Cottrell, who's also been criticised because of his handling of abuse claims, will become the temporary leader of the Church of England. Well, earlier in the programme, we brought you the latest on the weather disruption here in the UK. And in the United States, 60 million people are currently under weather alerts across 30 states, with emergencies declared in 7. Well, Storm Blair swept eastwards across the country, leaving what the National Weather Service called the heaviest snowfall in at least a decade. And extreme weather is forecast to continue for days. In the wake of the storm, after it moves eastwards, there'll be harsh, cold air and strong winds, which could lock in mounds of snow and treacherous ice. From Wednesday, there'll be a fresh cold spell moving eastwards across the south of the US, which could bring yet more snowfall. Here's David Blevins with this report.
It's the worst winter storm to hit the United States in a decade, the Midwest bearing the brunt of the blizzard. The snow reached Washington in the early hours, blanketing a region 30 states wide. That placed 60 million Americans under a weather alert, 7 states forced to declare an emergency. Hundreds of flights were either cancelled or delayed, and with train services disrupted too, the National Weather Service advised people to avoid all but essential travel. They're used to snow here in the capital, but not this amount of it. In most parts of the district, it's 6 inches deep. And some isolated areas are recording 12 inches. That's a foot of snow they're commuting through. That requires ingenuity. Some found a way to reach their destination, while others had their hands full making the most of the winter wonderland. There's a winter weather alert across 30 states, and here you are building a snowman. What inspired you to do that today?
Well, when snowing in DC, right?
We're both from Florida, and so this is like our first snow ever, and so we just needed to really take advantage of it.
I'm from California. We very rarely get snow, and so when I get snow, not by choice, I decide to have fun with it.
Honestly, it's been very nice, very peaceful. I don't mind it.
Get ready, charge!
With federal government and schools shut, dozens faced off in what's become an annual tradition, countering the chill with a great snowball battle on Meridian Hill. David Blevins, Sky News in Washington.
Well, the storm certainly didn't stop the return of Congress today. The 2024 US election result has been officially certified by the Vice President, Kamala Harris. Her opponent, Donald Trump, will be inaugurated in 2 weeks' time. Today was certainly a different mood than that of 4 years ago when the Capitol building was attacked by rioters, as our US correspondent James Matthews reports.
It wasn't just the weather in Washington that gave the Capitol building a different look and feel to this day 4 years ago. It was ghostly in the grounds. 9-foot fencing sealed off this seat of democracy for hundreds of yards. So did a police operation beefed up following the failures of 4 years ago.
We need to hold the doors of the Capitol.
January 6, 2021 is seared into US history. The day a mob stormed the Capitol in a bid to overturn Donald Trump's election defeat.
We fight like hell.
The president who cried, "Fight like hell," once faced criminal charges. That changed when he won the presidency a second time in November. The charges fell away. So did the prospect, this time, of a repeat of last time.
Pursuant to the Constitution,
the Vice President presided over procedure as planned. There was no election denial from Democrats, so the mahogany boxes that carried the votes from around the United States changed a presidency.
the state of Arizona,
North Carolina,
South Carolina,
state of Ohio.
Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 312 votes. Kamala D. Harris.
Ultimately, the ceremony certified Donald Trump's victory.
It was about what should be the norm and what the American people should be able to take for granted, which is that one of the most important pillars of our democracy is that there will be a peaceful transfer of power.
For a period, this place was under the control of a marauding mob. There was smashed glass, tear gas. The building was smeared with blood, and the crowd chanted, "Hang Mike Pence," the vice president at the time, who was in charge of the certification process. Donald Trump has promised a pardon for many of the rioters, some now in jail. On the anniversary, their families marched around the Capitol.
Their due process was violated by the way the DOJ went after the American citizens.
They committed a crime. There was a riot on the Capitol, the seat of democracy.
You know, that once again, that is one of the opinions that people do have. And
Is it not fair?
You know, I think it's fair for you to have whatever opinion is that you would like.
Oh, John Brown's body lies a moldering in the grave.
It's an issue awaiting Donald Trump's inauguration in 2 weeks' time. It is January the 6th. And we haven't heard the last of it.
Hallelujah.
James Matthews, Sky News in Washington.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, joined by the chief political correspondent of The Sun, Jack Elum, and the deputy political editor of The Guardian, Jessica Elgot. Welcome and great to see both of you. Among the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of The Guardian. Its headline, PM condemns Musk for lies and misinformation on abuse cases. That and plenty more, of course, when we come back.
I'm James Matthews and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump, it would appear, is about to learn his fate. There's no doubting the strength of this hurricane as it roars through. Sky News. Get the full story first. Do you fear a fourth indictment?
He's from Sky News. He's from Sky News. He's entitled to ask me questions.
Well, this is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. First, though, a reminder of our top stories this evening. The body of a man has been discovered from an area of flooding in North Yorkshire. Major incidents have been declared in Lincolnshire and Leicestershire due to severe flooding. The government has announced plans to strengthen laws on child sexual abuse. It follows a war of words between the Prime Minister and Elon Musk over grooming gangs. And NHS reforms are to include sending more patients to private hospitals for treatment, part of the government plans to cut NHS waiting lists by nearly 500,000 over the next year. Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with the chief political correspondent of The Sun, Jack Elsom, and the deputy political editor of The Guardian, Jessica Elgot. Great to see both of you. So, front pages then, let's start with The Telegraph, shall we? Reporting on the Prime Minister accusing those calling for an inquiry into grooming gangs of jumping on a far-right bandwagon after Elon Musk criticised the government's handling of the issue. The Guardian writes that Starmer has condemned the Tesla boss, suggesting that his lies and misinformation on the problem amplify what he calls poison of the far right. That word poison makes the front page of the Mirror as it focuses on the same story, as does the Metro X Factor spat hits Starmer, their headline. And indeed, the Daily Mail, Starmer's far-right smear on grooming gang critics. The Express's headline reads Starmer's out of touch on rape gang scandal. The Times looks at European leaders turning on Musk for attempting to influence politics beyond the country he is aboded in. The Eye says the NHS will send 2.5 million patients to private healthcare providers to reduce waiting lists. Financial Times leads with Justin Trudeau's resignation as the Canadian Prime Minister's own party turned on him. You want some ice with that? The Star reports on more than 20 people being stranded in Britain's highest pub in North Yorkshire for 3 nights now, as snow alerts are in place across the country. And The Sun has an exclusive on Shirley Ballas, a Strictly Come Dancing judge being stalked for more than 6 years. Well, a reminder, by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch our guests. So let's head to Jack and to Jessica. Goodness me, one story taking up a number of those newspapers, aren't they? The Metro calling it an X Factor spat, hitting Starmer. It's sweeping people up, isn't it? I know you were at that news conference today with Sir Keir Starmer, where he hit out that the lies and misinformation on this.
Yeah, this was really, I think, the crescendo of what's been building now for a few weeks, which has seen Elon Musk just lob attack after attack at Keir Starmer on a whole manner of things, but chiefly now about his response when he was chief public prosecutor to this grooming gang scandal. Keir Starmer, I think, has had a policy so far of trying not to give these attacks oxygen by not responding, but he felt he had to hit back today. There's been pretty horrible accusations against his safeguarding minister, Jess Phillips. There have been accusations on him personally. So he came out today, defended his record. It obviously means he has been dragged further into the spat with Elon Musk, who will be one of Donald Trump's key officials going into the White House in just a few weeks' time. But I think he felt that there was just no other alternative now than to hit back at this because, you know, his reputation was being trashed online, and he hit back pretty stridently today, accusing Elon Musk of smears and misinformation and lies. And, yeah, it's pretty punchy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, even Elon Musk posting earlier, asking if America should liberate the people of Britain from their tyrannical government. Has it gone, you know, so far that Sir Keir Starmer had no option but to, you know, involve himself in this?
I mean, if we take a step back, that is just an extraordinary thing for someone who is a close advisor to the president-elect of the United States to tweet about a sovereign country, supposedly with a special relationship with the United States. So, you know, often we think in this political sphere we go through the looking glass, but that truly feels like it is. I think one of the things for Keir Starmer, which meant that he had to respond today, and he has tried to stop giving this oxygen, is the attacks against Jess Phillips, his safeguarding minister, who has worked tirelessly for women and girls in her previous life as well, against domestic violence and victims of sex crimes. And so I think he felt like if he didn't defend her from some of these attacks from Elon Musk, then she would find potentially that her position was intolerable. If your boss is not sticking up for you in those circumstances, that's a really, really, really bad look. So I think that's certainly part of why he felt he had to head back. But they're in a big dilemma because ultimately government departments, the Prime Minister, they're constantly making the announcements, on X. That they're still using the platform all the time for day-to-day business, and I think that will be the next question.
Whether they pull?
Whether they really feel like they can keep using a platform being run by a man with a vendetta against them.
Well, that would be quite a moment, wouldn't it? I mean, it's already sort of upturned normal relations, you might argue, between the US and UK, given his future role in a Trump government, should he be approved by Congress and so on. Daily Mail, Starmer's far-right smear on grooming gang critics. This is really seeing the divide of the newspapers, isn't it, really, to be fair? Where their politics lie.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that one thing which let Starmer down in his speech earlier, because he gave a very robust defence as his time as chief public prosecutor, but one thing which I think then sort of overshadowed that in the public discourse following was this attack on Kemi Badenoch, where he said that Tory politicians and politicians are now calling for inquiries because they are jumping on a far-right bandwagon. Now, this was interpreted by a lot of people who do want this inquiry, not just politicians, that they are somehow being lumped in with the far-right because they want this national inquiry. Downing Street afterwards had a bit of a clean-up operation, which they said they were just referring to politicians, Tory politicians, who were in the last administration, who are now calling for this inquiry, whereas when they were in government, they did nothing. But I think it was a bit clumsy the way he framed it, because it was seen on social media afterwards, and I know we sort of talked about how social media can feed some false information, but it did seem that he was almost implying that anyone who is calling for a national inquiry into what is, he himself admitted, incredibly important issue, which hasn't properly been, maybe tackled in some people's eyes to the full extent that it should have been. He was saying that anyone who's calling for this proper probe now, a full probe that zeroes in just on grooming gangs itself, was sort of, in cahoots with Tommy Robinson. And I think that was where there was a bit of a sticking point.
Yes, including victims and those who worked on it, whistleblowers like Maggie Oliver, for example. But what about the Tories' position on this, given a lot of this happened, during their tenure? Kemi Badenoch, as we know, called for a full national inquiry into the rape gang scandal. Robert Jenrick, Shadow Justice Secretary, saying the scandal was caused by importing hundreds of thousands of people from alien cultures who possess medieval attitudes towards women. Now, where is he going with that thought?
I think it's quite an extraordinary thing for a Tory politician to say something like that. And that is notwithstanding the fact that there was clearly a very, very serious issue that was going on with these grooming gangs. But at the same time, I think the way that the Conservative government attitude towards things like the Alexis J inquiry into child sexual abuse, that report has sat on the shelf of Tory politicians for many, many years without almost any of the recommendations being actioned in it. And so they are on thin ice, I think, when it comes to proposing solutions now, when, they've had sort of off-the-shelf solutions for it, ready for them to act on, and they haven't.
Yeah, let's look at the contrast with the Mirror. There's the Daily Mail. The Mirror, poison, outrage at billionaires, grooming gang smears. The PM warns far-right lies are putting people in danger. I mean, we're at loggerheads, aren't we, if you look at that front page?
Yeah, what is interesting, though, with this is that while he really sort of tore lumps out of Elon Musk today, a byproduct of Elon Musk's, I think, sort of raising the profile of grooming gangs is that today we did get actual action from the Home Secretary. Right. And so it's weird how, they want to sort of distance themselves from Elon Musk, but he is very influential and has actually seemed to have, in a weird roundabout way, put this back on the agenda and actually inspired some change today.
Yeah, change. Yvette Cooper announcing what exactly then, Jessica? What did we hear?
So she's going to make it a duty for certain professionals who encounter allegations of child sexual abuse to report them. Again, it's one of those sort of quite obvious things you think should be a duty already, but it is only in certain professions. And so that was one of the key demands in this Alexis J inquiry into child sexual abuse. It wouldn't just cover grooming gangs, it would cover lots of different instances of kind of predatory behaviour against children. So But Jack's absolutely right. You know, actually, this is something that really has been pushed under the carpet for years, and perhaps it's in ways a good thing that it's now on the top of the agenda.
Well, interesting how much influence the Musk-Trump partnership could have on UK politics. Nigel Farage, no doubt, nursing his wounds after what Mr Musk said about him yesterday.
Yeah.
Let's move on, shall we, to across the pond, but a different country. This is Canada. Justin Trudeau stepping down. Now, this is interesting in terms of the politics as well, isn't it, of Canada and what happened with the right there, right of politics.
Yes, because obviously not too long ago, Reform Party in Canada actually managed to sort of subsume the Conservatives, and I think Nigel Farage is seeing that as the playbook for his mission in the UK. Yeah, Trudeau's obviously taken a bit of a beating in the past few years. Cost of living high in Canada, housing crisis, bit of a backlash towards his policies on liberal immigration as well, and that's seen as poll numbers really tank. It means that he's got a bit of a headache with his own party now. Lots of infighting there. I think his finance minister quit not too long ago over his policies, and so he's decided to chuck in the towel today before that election later this year.
Yeah, minority government. I mean, what does it mean about Liberal governments, do you think? What are we overall seeing, do you think? Is the Labour government an outlier at the moment?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not so long ago that President Trudeau was a real inspiration to another political party, which was the Liberal Democrats, because he came from being, you know, the Liberals came from being one of the third party to winning and having this long dominance in Canadian politics. But now, of course, he's looking like he'll lose, you know, very, very badly to his party will lose very, very badly to the Conservatives. And apart from sort of President Macron, we really are seeing a sort of dearth of sort of progressive centre-left political leaders, and Macron, you know, very hamstrung by the parliamentary elections in France. And, you know, he's still got another couple of years in power, but he'll have to step aside then because of the presidential term. So Keir Starmer kind of almost stands alone as someone with a really big majority who can kind of potentially be a world leader in things like in progressive issues like climate change. He's going to find himself with very few friends on the world stage and that kind of thing.
Under attack, as we can see, I think, don't you? That's the point. Interesting times we're living in, certainly. Lots more still to come, though, in the next part of our programme, taking a look at the weather as well. After 23 punters get stuck at a pub in North Yorkshire, the Daily Star asks, you want some ice with that? Back in a moment.
Once almost lost, these denizens of the deep are back. The problem for these whales is global warming. Water temperatures are rising.
We're worried that the animals are actually starting to starve.
Deadly and outdated. What do you think should happen to the nets?
I would like to see them go.
I'm Nicole Johnston, Sky's Asia correspondent, based here in Beijing. A towering monument to the China dream and its demise. From one end of this country to the other, China is littered with real estate that's falling apart. China is facing a tsunami of the elderly.
We have to work as long as health allows, otherwise, no money.
China is under pressure to pay for the pensions of 500 million retirees. I've reported on a wide range of stories from around the world. Mass protests forced the president to flee. The sight of the president's private swimming pool only reinforces to Sri Lankans the great divide here between rich and poor. Aid groups say Gaza is now the world's most dangerous place to be a child. The Israeli army has raided towns and villages all over the West Bank. These tunnels run all over Gaza. The Gaza Strip is ridden with them. The referendum designed to unite the country has only deepened its divide. Sydney's floodplains underwater again. This is the third or fourth time in the 18 months that their homes have gone under. Sky News, the full story first. It may seem like a gimmicky toy, but it is part of the global race between the United States and China for new technology. This elite engineering, designed to humour and to help us.
We're rolling.
Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting.
Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Well, let's just bring you some breaking news concerning Donald Trump and the hush money trial. You might remember it, based in New York. We had heard from the judge at the back end of last week that Donald Trump would be sentenced this Friday. Donald Trump appealed, and we've just heard, in fact, that the judge has refused the postponement so that Donald Trump could appeal that case. So there will be sentencing of Donald Trump on 34 counts found against him this Friday. Full coverage, of course, on Sky News of that. Well, welcome back. You are watching the press preview with me once again, the chief political correspondent of The Sun, Jack Elum, and the deputy political editor of The Guardian, Jessica Elgot. Welcome back to both of you. Let's head to The Star, shall we? Straight to that, which is, you want some ice with that. This is the Tan Hill Inn, said to be the highest in England. I think it is, isn't it? And the whole point is, as you know, because you've got a correspondent in there, they can't get out.
Yes, so our northern correspondent, Robin, she went there to sort of interview people who potentially thought this was a possibility during the snow-in. Anyway, she went there to interview people, and she's been there for 3 days. Probably the best assignment that she's ever had, to be stuck in a pub for 3 days. I don't know if she thought it would be that long, but apparently she says that the pub keeps enough food in for a month. So they are well stocked. She's been having Yorkshire puddings and pies and drinking pints.
We're in the wrong job, aren't we?
We certainly are.
Pub correspondent.
I think the worry is if they run out of alcohol, but apparently food as well.
Yeah, well, we spoke to them a little earlier on today. They're all getting along. They've got an Australian in there as well who built his first snowman, thoroughly enjoying the.
Are they all drunk?
The British snow, not fully.
Presumably,
I
you
think.
start drinking at about 8,
I think
9
they're
o'clock
having a fine time.
Days.
Unlike everybody who's trying to get to work or to school today, and multiple school closures, because it has caused a huge amount of disruption, hasn't it? This weather.
Yeah, it has actually. In fact, there's a story in the front page of the Telegraph showing just how sort of the widespread effect it's having on trains, for example, and not just because the snow gets in front of the trains and they can't run, but according to the Telegraph, train services were cancelled over the weekend because trade unions told their drivers not to walk on the snow. This was a service from Liverpool in which ASLEF drivers were instructed by their health and safety officials at their union that because of the walkway from the platform to the trains were not gritted, they weren't allowed to actually get into their carriages.
Might have been very icy.
It might have been very icy, but everyone else has to walk on snow, don't they, when they get to work? Not everyone has, gritters that go outside their front door. It just seems, a bit snowflakery, maybe, to use sort of a pun, that they wouldn't walk on snow to be able to get to their train.
And what did the union
thousands of journeys were disrupted because of it.
And what did the union have to say?
The union issued a very pithy quote to the Daily Telegraph in which they said this is basic safety stuff. And so clearly they are, defending their position, although I think that most right-minded people and frustrated passengers might be a bit peeved with this.
Jessica, let's go to the inside pages of the Metro, shall we? This is the Treasury Minister, Tulip Siddiq, who has, we learnt today, referred herself to the ethics czar for MPs. Looks like she's also been dropped from a foreign trip as well. So what is the story about her and what what happens next.
Yeah, Tulip Siddiq, who's the city minister, was supposed to be accompanying Rachel Reeves on this incredibly important trip that she's taking to Beijing, which had a sort of financial services bent. No, she's not going now, and she's, in fact, doing something deeply uncomfortable, which is answering questions from Sir Laurie Magnus, who's the Prime Minister's ethics advisor. She's very insistent she's done nothing wrong, but she has a lot of questions to answer about these London properties that she's apparently been gifted or been renting from various political allies of her aunt, who used to be the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, the now ousted Prime Minister of Bangladesh. It's all the more uncomfortable. And like I say, she says she hasn't done anything wrong by this because she's in charge of corruption and she's in charge of, making sure that the financial markets operate fairly. So, she's been quite a close ally of Keir Starmer. She's his constituency neighbour in Hampstead and Kilburn. So, this is all a bit of an awkward one for the Prime Minister.
Yeah, I mean, lots of questions building up over this, and you can just see that this story is going to run and run and run because in the papers over the weekend there was sort of more of a drip feed of stuff which came through to the surface with this. And this story's been running for 3 years now. And even at the time, Tulip Siddiq denied the journalist that this was gifted to her. And that's obviously transpired not to be true now. So Keir Starmer did the inquiry, so we can now sort of kick it into the long grass.
Jack, Jessica, lovely to see you both. Thank you. More from them in the 11. Here's the forecast, though. The weekend's disruptive rain and snow has ended, leaving us in a northerly flow which will last all week, bringing wintry showers and extensive frosts. A frost for most at first tomorrow, severe in parts of the north, wintry showers and icy stretches likely. The morning will bring sunny spells, wintry showers, showers concentrated in the north and west. Snow looks like being largely confined to hills above 200 metres. Cold, breezy, coastal gales in the northeast. Won't be as windy as today. Well, our press preview continues at 11. We'll have more on that weather, bringing floods, snowdrifts to parts of the UK as one severe flooding comes into force tonight.
Weeknights on Sky News.
This is your chance. Tell people. Welcome to the Politics Hub.
Our police force has apologised. If you want to find out about Grimsby, you come to the docks.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Are you not concerned that that could lead to all-out war?
Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence. What's at stake here?
You are watching the press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump, it would appear, is about to learn his fate. There's no doubting the strength of this hurricane as it roars through. Sky News, get the full story first. Do you fear a fourth indictment?
He's from Sky News. He's from Sky News. He's entitled to ask me questions.